This is Dan Casey from UCLA's Financial Analysis, and I wanted to continue the discussion. I did the first video looking at the financial keys, and in particular focusing a bit on mortgages. I now wanted to continue and talk a bit about amortization. And amortization, in a way, is a simple concept, but sometimes can be a little hard to kind of get in your brain. It's one of those terms that maybe you use kind of regularly without really thinking about exactly what it means. But effectively, amortization is where you're paying off some kind of debt, certainly with a mortgage, with a car payment. And if you think about it, each payment you make on a mortgage, part of that goes towards principal, part of that goes to paying the interest. You know, effectively, you got to kind of pay interest first because you got to pay back the financial company that you borrowed from, the amount that's owed to them, and then whatever's left goes towards principal. And generally, with a loan, you're going to be paying off a lower, most of it's going to go towards interest at the beginning of a loan, and at the end, most of it's going to be going towards principal. And depending on what with a high interest rate, virtually all of it will go to interest at the beginning. Back in the day, and this will scare you a little bit, but I actually had a mortgage that had a 16.5% interest rate. So when you have a 16.5% interest rate, most everything initially is just going to pay that 16.5%. A little bit is going towards principal, and over time, as that principal comes down, there's lower and lower interest rates, or lower and lower interest costs, and so more and more can go towards principal. And then one of the other keys that on mortgages, at least for now, the interest is generally deductible. So often clients want to know how much of their how much of the last year's payments went towards interest. So it's a concept you need to go, certainly, an area that's ripe for testing on the CFP exam. We'll start off a little bit with the brute force method, and once you've seen the amortization keys, you'll say, why did Dan ever mess with this brute force method? But I'm doing it just one to show you, give you a little bit more of a sense of the concept of amortization, show you how you can actually do it manually, and then also I guess it'll give you a little bit of an appreciation for what the amortization keys are doing for you. And we touched a little bit on this in the last video, but here now we're going to break it down to a little bit maybe smaller piece. But looking at a 30-year mortgage, $250,000 mortgage, stick with our 7.5% interest rate, calculate the amount of interest paid and principal paid over the first 6 payments. So this might be as if somebody had maybe gotten a mortgage in the middle of the year, made 6 payments. They wanted to know how much they had paid down the mortgage over the first 6 months and how much they had put towards principal. Well, what we can do is calculate the remaining balance after 6 payments. So 354 payments remain. You effectively put the mortgage in, calculate the payment, and then change "and" to 354. We can then calculate based on that remaining balance. We know we started off owing $250,000. At the end, we'll find out we owe X. So the difference is how much went to principal. We can then calculate the total amount that was paid and subtract the amount that went to principal from that, and we get the amount of interest. So we start off 360N, 7.5 GI, put in our interest rate, $250,000 for our present value, and we get to 1748.04 that we've seen a number of times. If we now put 354N, calculate PV, we see the 248, 869.24, and that's now how much we owe to the mortgage company for our loan. So if we want to pay the whole thing off, we'd have to give them $248, $869.24. By difference from the $250,000, we can see that $1,130.76 went to principal over our first 6 payments on this mortgage. So if $1,130.76 went to principal, we know we paid the $1,748.04 times 6, or $10,488.22. The interest paid there, therefore, is the $10,488.22 minus the $1,130.76 that went to principal. Either went to principal or went to interest. So $1,130 went to principal, By difference, then, we see that $9,357.48 was how much of interest in the first 6 payments. And clearly you can see with an interest rate of 7.5%, which in today's terms is relatively high, that by far the majority of your payment is going to interest. At the end of this loan, it'll flip around and most of it would be going to principal. And this is just the numbers. We get our, the 1130.76 was the amount that went to principal. We take our 1748.04, multiply it by 6, we get our 10488.24, and we see our $9,357.48 of interest. Now, if you flip your 12C over, you should see something like this on the back, and it's kind of explaining your amortization keys. Believe it or not, and I actually think this has kind of hit the silly end, the CFP board, and I think this is still true, says that you have to put tape over the back of your calculator because it's cheating that you can look at this to get help on the CFP exam. I've certainly never heard of anybody putting tape over the back of their calculator, and if this is cheating, then it's really stretching my imagination. But effectively, what it's showing here is if you have a 30-year mortgage, 5.25% interest rate, you're borrowing $50,000. Here's how you would do the amortization. At the beginning part up here, we're effectively just putting it in. This is putting it into our financial keys. We then calculate the payment on the mortgage. And the next one's kind of interesting. You see this 0N. You can kind of say that's optional. That 0N's kind of optional, but I think it's good habit. Effectively, what's going on with amortization, we're going to work our way through a loan. And if you think about it, the amount of interest paid in the first 12 months, first year of a mortgage, is going to be higher than the amount of interest in the next 12 months, next 12 months. So where you are in time very much matters with amortization. You're kind of working your way through a calculator. And as you'll see, if you set N to 0 before you start doing your amortization, that if you set N to 0, then the N will be kind of a calculator to show you how many months you've amortized at that point in time. And so then here they're now doing 12F amort, effectively calculating the interest over the first 12 months of this particular mortgage. And when you hit 12F amort, what you're going to see is the amount of interest that's been paid over those first 12 months. You hit your X exchange Y key, and you'll now see the amount that's gone towards principal. Hit X exchange Y again, you'll go back to payment. So this is one of those cases where knowing your registers, understanding what's going on is very helpful, because it's actually, the 12C is actually giving you two answers back. It's giving you the interest first and then the principal. So here's an example. So for back to our 30-year, $250,000 mortgage, let's calculate the interest paid and principal paid in the first 6 payments. Effectively what we just did, kind of brute force, let's do it using the amortization keys. So first you put your mortgage in your calculator. Calculate your payment, you're going to see your 1748.04. Set N to 0. Again, not required. You'll see that if you forget to do that, you'll get the correct answer. You just kind of, you'll be a little bit lost as where you are in the mortgage. You hit 6F amort, you should now see the 9357.46. X exchange Y 1130.78. So you'll see your interest first, then you hit exchange Y, you see your principal. Also a little bit handy at this point, if you recall your PV, you can see the PV set to where the present value, how much you owe the mortgage company at the end of this point in time. And then just kind of as a confirmation, hit a recall N, and you'll see 6 that effectively says we are now 6 months into this mortgage. So if we do any amortization from this point on, it's going to be starting 6 months in. It's not starting at the beginning. If we want to start at the beginning, we have to kind of reset, put our mortgage back in, and calculate it all over again. Now let's assume that you made 12 payments in the second year, how much did you pay towards interest, and how much did you say towards principal. And notice when we're saying second year, this is after the first six payments, because that's kind of where we are. So it's like somebody got the mortgage in June, made 6 payments in the first year. We're now sitting there, our N is 6, how much went towards interest, how much went towards principal. Recall N just at this point, just to show, okay, yep, we really are sitting here, we're 6 months in. We now hit 12F amort, and we'll see this $18,584.07. And again, I don't want this negative. It's not a negative amount went towards interest. $18,584 went towards interest, and hit the X exchange Y key. Hit that X exchange Y key, and it'll flip our X and Y registers around, and we get to $2,392.41 went to principal. Recall PV, we see that our remaining balance at this point in time is $246,476.81. So we paid down kind of for the first 18 months, sort of $3,500 of the mortgage. And now if we recall our N, we'll see 18. So I think you can get a sense of how powerful these are on the quizzes. I'll ask you something like, I'll say, how much interest is paid in the 6th year of a mortgage. And so effectively what you're going to have to do is get rid of 5 years. So you would hit 5 times 12 or 60 F amort, put the mortgage in, hit 60 F amort, and that it'll kind of calculate, take you through the mortgage. And that, now if you had set N to 0, you'll do a recall N, and you will see that N now will say 60. You now, and you don't really care about that. All you did there was just get through those first 5 years. Now you do 12F amort, and you'll calculate the interest, X exchange Y, and you'll get the principal for that sixth year. What you might do, just kind of for just for interest, is put in, or not interest, just kind of to maybe add a little bit to your understanding, is put in a mortgage. Maybe use this one we're using with 7.5%, and then keep doing a series of 12F amort, and then X exchange Y, and you'll get a sense of how over time the interest being paid every year is going down, and the principal being paid every year is going up, until if you get to the very end of the mortgage, virtually everything's going to principal, very little going to interest, which makes sense because at the end you just don't owe as much, so the interest on this lower amount, is not that large. And then the other thing is, you may sometimes see, well, my answers differ a little bit from Dan's, or they differ a little bit from the book. This is one time where how you have your calculator set matters very much. If you're in F2, then the 12C is assuming you're paying kind of dollars and cents, which you likely are. If you're in F4, then this calculator is assuming you're paying down to what, thousandths of a cent. And so it's like a finer mortgage payment, and it's just due to the rounding over a lot of different payments that you'll get a slightly different answer in F4 versus F2. And since, generally we're going to be writing checks for dollars and cents, I think it makes the most sense for amortization to be in F2 mode. You won't get it wrong if you're in F4. You'll be close enough. Virtually all of the amortization I'll be grading manually, so I'll be looking at these and doing making sure that you effectively have the right answer. But I think it's maybe good form to be in F2 when you do amortization. Hope that helps. Any questions, certainly feel free to ask.